With Monica Lewinsky. While my answers were legally accurate, I did not.
And besides, the dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
Interviewed by police, Bernice Warden's son mentioned a frequent custom.
And I just started branching out. Dogs, cats.
Okay. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I wanted to sit down and talk about a topic that I've been very interested in for a while. And in my research, I've realized that this was actually very prevalent in the early 2000s in the media zeitgeist. Today we're going to be talking about Alcatraz. Just to reiterate on what I was talking about a little bit earlier, if you're not familiar with the references of Alcatraz in many different films, video games, etc., if you've ever seen What's New Scooby-Doo, came out in the mid-2000s. They have a few episodes about San Francisco and more specifically Alcatraz. If you've ever played Call of Duty, I think Black Ops 2 has Mob of the Dead and the Zombies part of it. Of course, Warzone more recently has the Resurgence map, which is basically just the Alcatraz prison. There was a movie, which I actually watched this morning, called Escape from Alcatraz, which has actually some really weird topics. It's like oddly graphic and like severely racist. Clint Eastwood is he's the main character, but yeah, so that one's a little weird. But yeah, there's all of these different pop-ups in media and film and all that kind of stuff, and they all relate back to Alcatraz. Now that we got all that out of the way, I should just do a very basic historical recap of what happened with this island, because originally it wasn't even a prison. It was not even discovered until I think 1775. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. In 1775, a Spanish explorer, his name was Juan Manuel. He was the first to sail into what we know is now the Bay of San Francisco. Actually, his expedition was able to map out 3 separate islands. One of them he named himself. He named it Alcatrazes. It's just been kind of adjusted to Alcatraz, but the basic meaning is just a pelican or a strange bird. So Pelican Island, Strange Bird Island, whatever you want to call it. But then in 1850, a presidential order is set aside for the island to be used for possible U.S. military reservations during the California Gold Rush. That was the resulting boom in the growth of San Francisco, and they really needed to protect. They just needed to protect everything. I think they looked at the bay and was like, "Hey, this is kind of a sore spot, so we need to really block this down so nobody can come in and distract or do anything about all this gold that was coming in California at the time." The U.S. government called this pretty much a castle. It was called the Citadel, or fortress, whichever one you want to say. I think it's referred to as both. But it was on top of the island around the 1850s, like I said, and they had a plan to install over 100 cannons, but this plan quickly fell through. They didn't really need to use this area for that kind of stuff. There wasn't really any real worry or fear of something going on that required extra military assistance in the bay. So I think that pretty soon after that, they kind of just dissipated, and that's when it turned into what we now know as Alcatraz. So all the way up until 1933, the U.S. government still occupied this island. To my knowledge, it wasn't in use or it was laying dormant, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure I read something about that. But yeah, so basically until 1933, it was owned by the government. Then the island was transferred to the U.S. Department of Justice for the use of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Right around the 1920s, 30s, there was a huge uptick in rampant crime and all that kind of stuff. And so they needed places to put the worst of the worst so that the other prisons were not being filled up with people who needed to be in a harsher environment. Also, Alcatraz was used for prisoners who had attempted to escape from their previous prison, whatnot. So basically, the worst of the worst, bad guys. George Machine Gun Kelly was one of a very a very popular name that you would probably hear if you looked up anything about Alcatraz. The Birdman of Alcatraz, we'll go into that a little bit later, but he's a weird character, total oddball, but somehow he's the most famous prisoner that was ever there, so we'll go into that a little bit later. But yeah, so basically at this point, the federal government has decided to open a maximum security prison, privileged penitentiary to deal with the worst incorrigible inmates, right? Exactly what I said. So this started around the 20s and the 30s, and with that, we can start talking about what was going on in the prison. Day-to-days, obviously the prisoners, of course the guards as well. The guards lived on the island with the prisoners, ate in the same dining hall as they did, so that's a really interesting thing, so I want to go into that a little bit, and let's just talk about that. And then, of course, we'll go into the prison break, which is the most intriguing and interesting part about this entire story. The island was laid out with some significant hotspots that you would probably know about if you've, like I said, played Mob of the Dead on Call of Duty. They're all of the different places you have to go to get the parts and do all that stuff to build the plane. But basically, the most important places that we're going to be talking about throughout this video is the cafeteria. Obviously, they're all eating in the cafeteria. The warden's office, which we will talk a lot more about the warden here a little bit, and then a lot more down the line when we get to the prison escape. The docks, which was where the boats came and went from the mainland, so they would bring the prisoners, take them off, take other people off if the prisoner sentence was over, blah, blah, blah. You know. But yeah, so these are these main places, and then the most important place that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be referring to this a bunch, is the library, which is where our main character of this story, Frank Morris, worked, and it's one of the biggest ways that they were actually able to complete this escape without being caught and without being recognized halfway through and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to the prison itself, the average population was only about 260 to 275 prisoners, and it would reach capacity at 336. So mind you, these are like the worst of the worst 200 prisoners, whether they've done something awful, of course they're all doing something awful, but like super, super bad, or they've tried to escape from multiple other institutions, which we'll hear more about in a sec. Alcatraz had only 1% of the total population in guards. So the amounts of guards were very slim. They did not have very many of them. We'll talk about the way that the prison's laid out and how they were able to get away for a while with only having this small amount of guards. Alcatraz was very different for a few reasons. All of this was manifested by the warden, which he's, I don't know what to think of him, to think that he's like a good warden or like a horrible sack of shit. But anyways, one person to a cell, no double ups. You only had 4 rights that you were entitled to, which was food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Everything else, every other privilege had to be earned, and it could be taken away. So he drove a really hard ship, and he basically wanted to punish these people for being here and show them that it was their decision on how they lived the rest of their sentence or the rest of their life or whatever. I have a quote here that I grabbed from the movie Escape from Alcatraz, and it's the actor, but it's the warden. And I would assume this is very similar to something that he might say. And I quote, "If you disobey the rules of society, you go to prison. If you disobey prison, they send you to us." So he's really just trying to like crack down on the fact that like if you get sent here, like you're in bad shit. So now we can go on and talk a little bit more about the people that we're going to run into and meet during this story, and then we can get into the prison escape and how they did it and how long it took, because I'm going to tell you, it took them borderline a year of planning and setting up, and it would have really sucked if this thing had fallen through. So that almost adds to the awesomeness of it, because they took so long, they were so meticulous, and they were so careful that they never got caught during this like almost year-long period that they're doing all the things that they did. There's 4 names that you're going to want to keep in mind for going forward. These are all the prisoners that were a part of escaping. Obviously, I said his name earlier. Frank Morris was the leader. He planned it all. He worked in the wood shop, and he was also a librarian, so he had access to wooden stuff. We'll talk about the tools that they used in a sec, and then also paper, just newspaper articles, ads, stuff that people aren't going to notice that's missing. The other two that were along with him were John Anglin and his brother Clarence Anglin. I'm trying to remember where they worked. One of them worked in the barber shop, which gave them the ability to make the fake dummy heads because they needed real hair for the eyebrows, the eyelashes, and the actual hair, so it looked real when they put the dummy head under the covers and they were going to leave. So one of the brothers worked in the barber shop, and I'm pretty sure the other brother worked in the maintenance department. He was also very fond of painting, and so he was the one who was kind of able to get the extra materials, that kind of stuff, paint, all that kind of whatnot. So those are the three main. But then we need to talk about one more guy because he's kind of important too. I just found his name. His name is Alan West. I think if you've played, bear with me. I'm going to be going back to the Mob of the Dead references like this entire video because I really like that game and that map in particular. I played the Easter egg and beat it in research of this just for fun, but whatever. I'm pretty sure that Alan West is the Weasel in Mob of the Dead, which is the guy who ends up getting screwed over by the other three. I think that that's pretty accurate. He aided them in their escape, but I don't think Alan West actually escaped for whatever reason. I think they might have just left without him, or he got cold feet and decided that he wasn't willing to do it. It was one of those two. Frank Lee Morris, middle name. Frank Lee Morris was born on September 1st, 1926. He was born to a woman named Clara, who was kind of a runaway. She ended up giving him up for adoption, or he was orphaned at 11. He spent most of his childhood in foster homes, just kind of bouncing back and forth. He was convicted of his first criminal offense at 13. By his late teens, he had been arrested for a bunch of different crimes like narcotics, possession of weapons, or driving while intoxicated, that kind of stuff. He spent his early adult years serving time in prison. Later, he got arrested for grand larceny, and he was eventually, after trying to escape from Florida and Georgia, so he tried to escape from both of those state penitentiaries, he was sent to Alcatraz on January 18th, 1960. And his inmate number was AZ1441. If that means anything to anybody, does not mean anything to me. The Aglin twins were John William Aglin was born on May 2nd, 1930, and Clarence Aglin was born on May 11th, 1931. So they were about a year apart. They were also delinquents when they were younger. Clarence was first caught breaking into a service station when he was just 14. The brothers began robbing banks and other establishments in the early 50s, using toy guns. Funny enough, they weren't even real, but still gets the job done or whatever. On January 17th, 1958, brothers John, Clarence, and Alfred Aglin, so Alfred we don't hear from anymore, but I guess there was a third brother, robbed the Bank of Columbia in Columbia, Alabama, and made off with about 19 grand. The FBI captured them all and they all received 35 sentences, which they served at Florida State Pen. Actually, I think Morris and John and Clarence knew each other from Florida. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they did. So it was Florida State Prison, Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary in Atlanta. They attempted to escape from all three, and they were sent to Alcatraz John was sent there on October 24th, 1960, and Clarence was sent on January 16th, 1961. I'm not going to give the inmate number thing. That's dumb. It doesn't matter. And then finally, Alan West, born March 25th, 1929. He did die, and they did find his body, something that we're going to talk about a little later is the fact that technically the other 3 are still MIA. I mean, this went on a long time ago, so they're probably gone by now, but they were never found, so that is still kind of up in the air. Alan West, he was born in New York City. He got arrested for a bunch of car thefts in 1955. Originally went to Atlanta Penitentiary and then Florida State Prison. Obviously tried to escape from both. And then he was transferred to Alcatraz in 1957 to serve 10 years. And then he was given a second term in 1958. Not exactly sure why. Okay, cool. Now we can get to the meat and potatoes of this stuff, because the background stuff is kind of boring. It's just like we just have to set the scene. So basically, I talked about all these guys working in their respective areas: the library, the wood, the carpentry area, the barbershop, utility closet, all that stuff. So they all made this plan to use their resources that they had to make an escape plan. Morris first realized that he could kind of chip away the concrete that was surrounding the vent that was in the wall. I read something about how when Alcatraz was being built and they were pouring the cement for the walls so that it would be like strong and solidified, which they said is the strongest, most unescapable penitentiary ever, and they were wrong, so whatever. But when they poured the concrete, in order to get like a clean pour without any air bubbles and stuff that reduces the strength of the concrete itself, you need to have like a constant motion of like a big long stick so that it's like constantly mixing the concrete to get rid of those air bubbles. Whoever poured it didn't do that. So over time, with like the humidity and the rain and just like corrosion and water damage and all that kind of stuff, rust, the concrete actually started to corrode, and it was actually like possible to chip away at it. So what Morris started doing was stealing spoons from the cafeteria, taking the top of the spoon and breaking it off, and then fastening the nail file part, or the file part of the nail clippers, fastening that to the top, and then using that as like a makeshift pick. At one point, Morris also was able to get his hands on a vacuum, and he pulled out the vacuum motor and was able to jerry-rig it and turn it into kind of like a makeshift drill, so that did help. The other 2 guys were kind of more focused on the artistic part. Obviously, when they got the vent out of the wall so that they could go in, they needed a way to cover it up because they needed to plan more. They couldn't just dig it out. There was guards all over the place, so they had to be very careful. So the Aglin brothers, one of them has their respective talent in art. So they start constructing papier-mâché heads that look like the men so that they can put them in the bed and nobody will recognize it after lights out or whatever. They're also making a life raft out of raincoats. So they're stealing raincoats from the utility closets and all that. Before I go any farther, I should have said this earlier, but whatever, I'm remembering it now. The plan was they would all respectively chip away their little vent in the wall, pull it out, climb through the hole. Mind you, these guys were like really tiny, like they're only like 130 pounds. I do not think that a bigger person would have been able to even fit through that, especially with how just like how easy it was to be caught and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that I think they probably planned for. But their plan was escape through the vent. Right behind the wall of their cell was like a long maintenance hallway that was like very spacious and completely monitored. So what they were going to do is go through the hole, climb up these like pipes and stuff in the wall, which were basically like a makeshift ladder. Climb up the pipes, get on top of the cell blocks on the roof of the cell block, then punch out a vent that goes to the roof, climb up to the roof, sneakily go across the roof and climb down, and then fasten or blow up the raft and like fasten all of their like safety stuff, get in the raft and float all the way over to Angel Island. So that was their plan. Everything up to the boat thing, we know worked perfectly, but we don't know if they actually made it or not. So that's still to be determined. So yes, first part of the plan is complete. They have successfully chipped away their vents, and so there's now a big hole there, and they've made their fake vent to replace it, and they have their fake head ready. The next step is to take time to make all of these extra items that they had gotten. I'm sorry, I think I might have said something earlier about how they were making these items. They were not making any of the raft or any of that kind of stuff until after they got all the vents chipped out, because there was just not enough space and not enough cover for them to build like a big inflatable raft. You know, they have a very small cell. It's a very open door. There's guards walking back and forth all the time. So what they figured out was, after they climbed up and through to just see where it went, there was a very spacious area right on top of all the cell blocks. Big, just like concrete area or whatever. What ended up happening was they asked the warden if they would be allowed to be paid a minimal amount to go up there during the day, under watch of a security guard, whatever, and repaint the walls and the ceiling. So they get this job, and so they're going up there every day, and they're painting the ceiling, and they're trying to go as slow as possible to buy themselves a bunch of time. But what happens is there's a lot of dust up there, and so all this dust is getting brushed off the top and down over onto the floor right in front of all the cells. So after a while, a bunch of the inmates and some of the guards start to complain. So the solution that they give the Aglin brothers and Morris is, just put up sheets around where the openings are up top, so that when the dust gets moved, it doesn't come down. So they basically inadvertently gave them a perfect workshop, completely covered from any line of visibility. Nobody expected them to be doing anything but painting up there. So they basically just had this place where they could go every single night and take as much time as they needed to construct their many different items that they needed for their escape. Before we go into the night that they finally escaped, I just want to reiterate something that I think I talked about earlier, but if I didn't, I need to get that straight now, because if I don't talk about this, it puts a lot of holes in the story. Every night from, I think it was 4:30 to 6 was music hour, and so inmates had the opportunity to either listen to music or play their own music. And so during this time, the inmates that we're talking about, they would play music. So I think Morris had an accordion or something like that. So he would play his accordion while the other two dug to mask the sound, and then vice versa. I'm not sure what they had, but either it was that or they were just playing a radio or something like that. So basically, the way that they were able to mask the sound of this loud, like, chipping of concrete, and of course, if you're using a power tool, that's going to be really loud. So I just wanted to preface that real quick before we go into exactly what happened on that crazy, crazy night. So let's go. Okay. All right. This is the exciting part. I'm excited. I've been wanting to talk about this the whole video. I'm going to try to keep this as linear as possible because I have been kind of jumping around. I'm just excited, and this is my first video on this channel. So apologize for that. Give me a little bit of slack if you don't mind. But I'm going to try to keep this as linear as we possibly can so that I don't miss any of the facts and we can get everything right after another. Okay. June 11th, 1962. After lights out at 9:30 p.m. and all the preparations were set, the four men initiated their plan. While the other three, Morris and the Anglins, were setting their dummy heads in place, Alan, which we were talking about earlier, the weasel of the group or whatever, realized that the cement that he had used to like reinforce the vent so that it didn't like crumble so that people could tell that it wasn't like fucked up or anything, it actually like hardened the cement and stuck the vent in place. So basically he's all ready to go. He's ready to leave. He has his dummy head, all that kind of stuff, and his vent is stuck. So he's screwed. So the other three, they put their dummy heads into place, pull the vent off, put the fake vent in place as they go in, climb up to the top of the cell block, which we know has all of their materials. It's got the raft, it's got makeshift paddles. I think they even made a makeshift like wrench or something with a 2x4 that has like a U piece carved out of it, and then like a piece of metal to solidify it so you can like turn it kind of like that. So they have all these things. So they get up to the grate, which is in the top of the ceiling, in the roof, and they climb in, or they climb up. And mind you, they have, Alcatraz has a light tower, a lighthouse, that's constantly rotating, and the beam is constantly showing on the top of the building, probably every 30 to 45 seconds. So they have to be really, really careful to not be seen, because if they get seen, they're just going to be shot. There's a guy up there with like a loaded rifle, and he's just going to shoot and kill him. So they have to be very careful. So they take their time, slowly slinking across the roof, trying not to be noticed. And they get there. They get to the end, the edge of the building, and they climb down a ladder. And they finally get to the water. And when they get to the water, they inflate the raft that they've made, and they put on their life vests that they've also made out of these raincoats that they've stolen, and tarps and anything they can really get their hands on. So they get all suited up, and they push the raft out to sea. Now this is the part that is a little bit ambiguous, because we really don't know what happened. There's speculation, and officially the FBI has said that they're dead, but no one knows that no one's found a body. No one really knows what happened. There's huge speculation on exactly how they could possibly make it to a body of land that's miles away in like very intrepid waters. It was also, the bay around Alcatraz is infested with sharks. Okay, so like, how the hell are you gonna get all the way across in this like crappy self-made lifeboat when there's rapids, waves, there's a current, like you have no way of navigating, whatever. So I don't know if they made it or not. For the sake of the story, I like to say that they made it, because that just makes it even cooler, but you can kind of think whatever you want. I did read about one occurrence where someone thought that they found someone's body, like one of the escaped convicts, but it was like a month after they escaped. And the authorities kind of just decided that like there's no way that after a whole month that is gonna, like, the body's gonna be anywhere near like the bridge or San Francisco in general. So I think what they ended up finding out was it was this is kind of sad. It was an unemployed baker who was like having some real trouble, and I think he jumped off the bridge and killed himself. So that's who they found, and I think they were later able to identify who it was. Good Lord, that was hard. But anyways, yeah, so we don't exactly know what happened to him, but it is just one of the coolest stories that I've ever read. I mean, it's hilarious that they were able to escape after the warden was so confident that no one was getting out. Like, he's such a cocky little bastard. And these guys escape. They escape like in the coolest way ever. The warden kept this information quiet for a really long time until he accidentally slipped up and released a picture of Alan West, which people were able to trace back. And I think Alan West even like said something about it after the fact. I think he said that he was an accomplice and got more time because of it. That's why he went back for the next 10 years, is because he was an accomplice to their escape. That's what it was. Yeah, so he told them that he helped out, and then that got to the news, and then the warden posted, yeah, this is like, he has a cell phone. The warden released a photo of Alan West, and then people realized, and he had to spill the beans, that he like screwed up and he had been hiding this for forever. So yeah, Alcatraz, dude, like, this place is cool. I have a couple recommendations. Go and play Mob of the Dead if you have it. If you don't have it, go buy it. It's a fucking fun game. I love it. There's like a Psycho episode, like a Alcatraz Psycho episode from Scooby-Doo episodes. What's New Scooby-Doo that's really good. Go watch that. I don't know if I can recommend Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood. I mean, if you like him, I guess watch it, but it's bizarre and racist and kind of weird. You see like full grown men just butt naked, just all out there. So that's weird. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is my first video on this channel. I think I'm going to keep doing more like this. I enjoy it, but let me know if you enjoy listening to me like ramble on about something that I've researched for like a week now. With that, I guess I'll see you guys next time if you guys decide to tune in again. So, deuces.